Well, hey everyone, this is not Shelley Johnson. Today on the show, we are changing things around a little bit. My name's Rohan Dredge. I'm the CEO of Pragmatic Thinking, and I actually asked Shelley if I could interview her so she could tell us the Boldside story. I think it's a story worth hearing. I think it's a story worth capturing, and you will hear some wonderful lessons, some wonderful themes, some wonderful insights, but you'll hear heart, passion, raw, vulnerable energy all the way through that I think makes up the Boldside story. So thank you, Shelley, for being part of this, and thank you for listening along so we can capture this but also learn from it at the same time.
This is a podcast about making work work. You'll learn about leadership, career growth, and how to navigate those weird work challenges. I run a HR consulting business called Boldside, where I help leaders build epic team cultures. If you lead a team or run a business and you think I can help, let's connect on LinkedIn. My name is Shelley Johnson, and this is Work.
So to kick things off right from the start, this was a conversation that's been 12 months in the making.
Yes.
Yes. And it was from an idea where we were going backwards and forwards on various things about business and life and work. And I asked you, I said, has anybody ever had a conversation with you about the why, what, and how of Boldside? And you said something really interesting. You said, nobody has ever offered to have that conversation with me. Say more about that.
Well, I was just, it's funny because I'm usually the one like having these conversations with people about their story, their journey on the pod. And you're like, why don't we flip it? And I actually interview you and talk to you. And I was like, really? What, like, and I think even now I'm like kind of nervous because I'm like, I'm not usually in the passenger seat of the pod. And so I've given you full permission to take this wherever you want. But I find it, I probably am good at asking questions. That's one thing I will pride myself on as being a skill. And I also overplayed. It would be like deflection. I could do that. Like my husband, Sam, he often says, like, you deflect. Like you'll go into wanting to focus on other people because you don't maybe want to talk about certain things or feel like you're
Do you think that's an ingrained HR thing, or do you think it's an ingrained Shelley thing, or a combination of the two?
Maybe a combination of the two. I know a lot of HR people who are great at either coaching or digging into other people's stuff, other people's issues. Also because I think we're just naturally curious about other people's weird stuff that they've got going on. So I'm always like wanting to know those kinds of things. But I think it's also maybe sometimes like, and I know we've talked about this offline, not wanting to over-promote yourself or what you do and finding it hard to find that tension point where you're like, yeah, so that for me, even now I'm like trying to talk about it. I'm like, I don't know, I feel like it's weird to talk about yourself at length.
It's definitely, the conversation is definitely asking you to shift gears. I think more co-pilot than passenger seat. That's the way I would approach it. But the seed idea for me was I've known you for several years and even longer, you know, in various sort of forms, but, you know, connected with you professionally pre-COVID in 2018, 2019, 2020, and then watched you launch Boldside and was part of those conversations. So the risk for me is I know I was part of the genesis of the conversations. We've had some really powerful, seminal conversations. I don't want this to sort of indirectly point back to some of those conversations, but I suspect they'll come up. And you've got enough of a network where there'll be other people where you've talked. But there's a conviction for me that with what I see you delivering to the market, the way I see you running your business and showing up as a business leader, but also as a wife and a mum. And I think that's also worth talking about because Sam's a legend.
He is.
And you've navigated the difficulty of that well, and you've also got a wonderful family and family of origin as well. And so there's all these really interesting things that have made up what you're doing right now. And I thought we need to try and capture that as best as we can, even if it's episode 1 and we come back. So, most people start off with, so where did you go to school and what did you do? What did you do and learn? I will get to that. But my first question is, when you dreamed up Boldside, like, what did you dream it could be?
Not what it is, which is weird, right?
Has that surprised you?
Yeah.
What is it that surprised you?
Everything. Ro, have you heard people say that whole idea of don't run from something, run to something?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that as a principle. I just don't think that's my story. I appreciate people saying you should run to something, not from something. But if I think about where my career has taken me from, I feel that the business started when I was in a pretty rough spot in my career. And I would probably say I was running from something, not to something. I actually had no idea what I wanted to be doing, but I knew what I didn't want to be doing.
Yeah.
And I felt much more clear on, I do not want to do that. That is not it. That is just not it.
What's the it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's what I did. I worked in HR for a long time, in internal HR, in kind of consulting, and I was working in an environment where I just knew I didn't have any creative outlet. I felt really and I've talked about this a little bit on the pod. I felt really anxious all the time, and I'd probably never prior to that described myself as an anxious person. But I was in a job where I was just it's really hard to even think about it now. It's really hard to put my finger on what was it that wasn't right. It was just probably a combination of factors where I wasn't able to use my strengths. And so I felt really maybe boxed in, or I wasn't actually working in a way that was helpful. And then all of a sudden all this anxiety stuff kept coming up for me. And I knew, I'm like, I have to get out. And I remember Sam saying to me, he's like, I've never seen you like this, our whole marriage and our whole relationship. And I was like, well, I can't continue in this way. It's just not healthy. I just was not in a good space. So I quit the job with nothing to go to. And I would never recommend that to people. We had a careers pod. It was My Millennial Career was what it was called back then. I'd been doing the pod for a while. And I'm hosting this careers pod in the middle of a major career crisis, Ro. I was not good. I quit my job, nothing to go to. I remember exactly where I was. I was in the middle of Sydney, CBD. I'd just finished up a workshop with a particular client. And Glenn, who hosts this, he runs the podcast community we're part of, calls me. I just quit. And he goes, Shell, I've just been talking to the publisher, Wiley. Oh, they want us to write a career book, you and me. So what do you reckon? And I'm in the middle of Sydney. I'm having a major existential crisis, a total crisis. And I'm like, sorry, what? And he's like, they want us to write a careers book in the next 6 months. And I'm like, Glenn, I have just quit my job with nothing to go to. I'm having a total breakdown. Why do you want me to do this thing?
But I've got all this spare time.
Well, and then it was so funny. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm unemployed. And he's like, Shell, this is the time to write it. And it was so funny. You have these moments in your career. I reckon I probably only maybe had 3 of them that I could point to. And that was absolutely one of them that are a moment in time that if you don't act, you're going to miss something. And I see exactly where I was in the street. And I'm like, I'm just going to say yes. Even though everything in me is you have no reason to be writing. You have absolutely no qualifications in this. You're unemployed. And I just stepped into it going, I felt like I was going back to that idea. You don't run from something, run to something. I'm like, no, I'm running from something. I'm running from a job I didn't love and a kind of personal situation that I felt like I was not my best self. But actually that stepping into the unknown was where I think this business was birthed out of that. And that's where some of those ideas came from. And I did for the next 6 months, I took 6 months off work, and I get the privilege to be able to do that. My husband had his own business, so we were able to, for me, to take that time. I had Bowie, my youngest, he was only 1, so he was really little, so I got to have some more space with him. And we wrote this book in 6 months, and it's a mammoth of a book. It's like a textbook, like an absolute beast to write. And that process, I think, revealed to me the thing that I probably cared about most. And having worked in organisations in HR capacity where you see people issues every day, team issues every day, I started to realise, like, you know what? Almost every HR issue, before it's a HR issue, it's generally a leadership issue, a leadership skills gap, leadership problem. And I'm like, I love working with leaders. I love helping people grow. And I personally love growth is such an important thing for me. It's such a deep, deep thing of like personal growth. And I was like, I think I need to do my own thing, start my own business. And it's so funny even talking about this because I'm like, I was the most anxious I've ever been in my life. I didn't know how to do anything to do with the business. I'd come from HR. I've never sold anything, never marketed myself, like any of those things that a business owner has to do. And in
some ways, actually, your profession teaches you that's the antithesis of that. It's you don't do those things. You know, HR is sort of a supporting role or a capability role or compliance role or those types of things. You don't do the power moves that get people to notice you.
And you often think you need to be in the background. Yeah. And so in the middle of this zone of like deep probably fear was then like this idea of like, what are we going to call this business? And I feel like one of the biggest challenges we see in organisations is the ability to have tough conversations, courageous conversations. No question. So this idea of like Boldside, like how do we help leaders become bold? How do we help teams become really bold in what they do? And the irony of it was I felt like I had none of that in me at the time. But I know when I'm in my healthy zone, that is how I show up. And I was like, I'm going to step into that place. That's me, my healthy zone. I'm going to do that. We're calling this business Boldside, even though I feel like absolutely terrified. That's where I'm going. And it was weird because the growth has felt a lot probably easier. Like it's been heaps of hard work, but it's happened more quickly than I ever would have expected. And that it's really weird to even talk about that. That is my big rambly way of saying this is how it started.
But I think that's part of the story, right? Yeah. And because I think the mistake that we make is that we take somebody else's story and we create a process from it, or we create a set of rules and regulations. Because what you're not saying is that everybody that's having an existential crisis in their HR role should start their own business, right? That's not what you're saying. Yet there was actually a layer or two to some of the things that you've just said that I want to unpack a little bit more. The first thing is this. Do you think that based on your experience exiting the workforce and entering your own business, do you think your experience makes you more empathetic to the challenge that an HR professional goes through and the tensions that they experience? Because I see it quite often. They have so many, we call them business partners, but they service the internal service deliverers to people who are never satisfied, not because they're unsatisfiable, but sometimes the environment just keeps moving and changing. Has it made you more empathetic? Has it deepened the resolve to support them, but also to push that idea that go, before it's an HR issue, it's a leadership issue? I think that is gold, by the way. Yeah, so just reflect on that a little bit.
I think Don Price, a fair few of our listeners would have heard of him. He said to me once, he's like, Shell, you really identify as a HR person. Like you it's almost like your identity is seen as a HR professional. And I think he was kind of saying, I don't know if that's fully healthy, like to wrap your identity up in a career. And I think he was right in some regards. One thing for me is like, I love the profession of people and culture. I think that it is such a tough job. And it is often lumped in with HR are asking us to do our online modules. HR are asking us to do this. HR are trying to get us to jump through hoops. I'm like, no. HR are trying to help build a thriving organisation. And one of the biggest challenges is a people manager who doesn't want to address the performance issues on their team. And they have to hit into that day in, day out. They're dealing with some of the most toxic, unhealthy parts of an organisation that are completely confidential. It's lonely. It's isolating. They can never talk to people about what's going on in their world. And so for me, like, I love people and culture people. I am obsessed with them. I think they are like the unsung heroes in organisations, and no one knows the work that they do. And they don't ever ask. They're not the people getting shout outs on teams ever. They're not the people getting the like awards. They're the ones organising the awards for everyone else.
They're the goalies who should save the goals. And when they don't,
Yes.
everyone knows they didn't.
Wow, that's such a great...
It's tough.
And I think, to me, like, I love working with... We're so privileged to work with, I would say, some of the best people and culture leaders in Australia. We work with some of the most creative, generous, high capacity, high capability people, and I think most of their organisation probably don't realise.
I wonder if part of your success, because it's been quite significant, is Boldside success is that this target market knows you get them and they know you care about them. And you also see in them what I think you lost, because that's the other part of it. The bit that you said that you gave voice to, but I don't think you put words to, was you were losing a creativity. There was a creativity that you were losing. There was even possibly an agency that you were losing because the job was becoming something that you didn't want it to be. And it's almost like I'm wondering if Boldside is the expression of the things that if you had if you had your own job, what would it be? What would it bring? What would it give? And it would give that sense of confidence and capability and liberation to people and culture people, because that's why they got into it in the first place. Would that be fair?
Oh my gosh, that's really, like, I feel like you've just hit a nerve there with the like, couple of things. The creativity stuff's really massive. I think a lot of people would feel squashed in compliance versus like, actually, how do we be creative and how do we actually get to the good stuff, which is helping teams thrive and do their best work and build a culture of build healthy cultures. The agency thing's massive, Ro. Like, I was thinking, kind of in preparing for this chat we were having, what are the things that are really deeply important to me? Like, I don't know, you could call them your personal values, you could call them principles, whatever term you want to use. I think for anyone listening, in your career, it is really helpful to know your personal values or principles that are important to you. And I think when you're in a place where you're really unhappy, you often see a drift from those principles. So for me, the three things that are really important to me, one is growth. Number one, like, I have to feel like I'm growing to be happy at work. If I'm not growing, I feel like my soul's being crushed. And then the second one would be autonomy. And so when you said agency, I'm like, yeah, that's a big part. Like, autonomy, deciding where are we focusing our energy, what are we going after, like flexibility in how I work is a non-negotiable. I don't think I could go back to an environment where I didn't have that. I think I would really struggle. And then the last one's fun. And like, that's part of, like, I think if I don't have those three things in a job, I'm not going to be my best self. And so being able to then go back and retrofit, when I look at when I've been my best self at work, I've had those things. And when I have been my worst self, like the version of me where I wasn't just an anxious mess, I haven't had that.
Yeah.
At least two of them haven't been present. And I think for every person, you've got to be able to work that out for you. What are those two or three principles or values for me to be in my healthiest, most effective zone? And maybe they change over time with, family and kids and all that stuff. Like, it could look different over periods of time. But I would say for the last probably 7 years, those things have been acutely important. And doing the deep work to actually recognise that really matters.
See, I think one of the things that comes out of you, and again, this is a relatively unscripted conversation based solely on the seed idea of unpacking how Boldside came about, because I think that's a story worth telling. There's so much about the way you're describing how you like to work, what your priorities, focuses and emphases are, that is the heart and soul of Boldside now, which is the privilege of running your own business because you get to create it. I want to ask more questions about those early days and the first clients, and then figuring out, the sales and all those types of things. That's a little bit mechanical. You and I both know the story that I tell, where I roll all the way back to 17, where I got some feedback around a psychometric test that said, Rohan's at his best when he's standing in front of a room convincing them of something that he believes in. It's like more than 35 years later, and I'm still doing that.
I love that.
And I look at that and go, that is it's an immutable truth around how I show up to the world. Often there are things that we can go right back to primary school, or right back to high school, or right back to our early 20s, or whatever it was, and we go, there were principles or experiences or skills then that are now seeing the light of day in a way that are just being given air and influence and momentum. Is there anything about the growing up, Shell?
Oh, this is so wild.
that we're seeing play out in the running a business, Shell?
It's so weird, because I have not thought about, I couldn't, in probably 15 years, this thought has not crossed my mind. But just hearing you describe that of 17-year-old Rohan, was there anything? And I know for me, I love writing. And one of my first ever Strengths Finder report, one of my top 5 strengths is communication. I've always loved communicating in written form, absolutely, but verbally, like this pod, absolutely one of the things that I love to do. But writing is probably my thing that I get so much joy from. And I know it sounds weird, but I think about in year 8 in English, I remember we were doing this writing thing, and the Australian published this article. Now, I couldn't off the top of my head tell you what the article was. It was an opinion piece in the Weekender. And I saw it and I said to my mum, I'm going to write into the letter to the editor. And that was back in the day, they would publish all the little people who wrote in their comments. Now it's just the comments section. It's a hellscape. But back then I was like, okay, I'm going to write a little letter to the editor with my ranty response to the article. And it was it was a bothered response to this article that they wrote as a year 8, 13-year-old kid. And it got published the next week in the Australian. And I remember cutting it up and putting it on the fridge of my house and being like, Mum, my letter to the editor has been published as the first one in response to this thing. And I took it into my teacher, my English teacher, Mrs. Dobby, her name was, and showed her and was like, I'm in the newspaper. I'm in the newspaper, Mum. I know my teacher, I'm in the newspaper. And I think that's where I felt like I loved communication and loved writing and getting ideas out there and opinions. And I think the power of creating okay, what do I think? Critically think about this idea or concept and being able to articulate that in a way that's clear and concise, and then maybe sometimes rambly like I am right now. And I look back on that and go, fast forward to, you couldn't have said at that point as a 14-year-old girl, oh yeah, by the way, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age are going to ask you to write for them in 15 years and you're going to write for their work column. And just things like that I'm like, oh, now that you've prompted me to think about it, I have always cared about communication, I've always cared about writing and getting ideas and opinions across.
Well, what's really interesting is, and I wasn't sure what to ask you about this offline or online, but your content production is prolific.
Or obsessive, or relentless.
I'm using the word prolific, and you actually write well. It's interesting. So now you've written a book while you're unemployed about being about having a career. That's a wonderful selling point. Do you still Like, do
Yeah.
you still find the joy in writing and the joy in that distilling the ideas, just perhaps with a little bit more focus because of Boldside or because of the work that you're doing? Like, has it changed at all, or does it just feel like it's got a bigger voice?
I think it's really interesting. Like, I have started going back to like handwriting things. And so I've got always have a moleskin journal in my bag. Always. Do you love moleskin too?
I love it. You've got to go analog.
Oh, and blank pages. I can't have, I don't like lined pages because I feel like it constrains thought. And so I have this blank pages notepad always on me because at any moment, like a thought will come in and I'll just want to write it down. But I've gotten more into the habit lately. I used to write every day, every morning. The travel schedule has not allowed for that in the same way that I probably used to. Probably the first 2 years of the business would write every day. Now I am more intentional, so I'll be like, okay, at least once a week I'm going to sit on my balcony with a wine and write down whatever thoughts come into my head about work that week. And that's where ideas will form. And I find...
Do you get funnier as the wine gets lower?
It actually gets more creative.
Your opinion piece goes higher.
Yeah, and I'll get rantier as the wine goes on. But I think...
Today's post is brought to you by...
by Prosecco.
A 2017
delicious
Semillon.
It's not that nice. It's just like a cheap Prosecco. But to me, like even with AI, where everyone's like, oh, I'm going to put all these ideas into ChatGPT and blah, blah, blah. And I get that and I get the efficiency of it. But for me, the process of writing it actually brings me joy. And so I'm like, I'm not going to outsource that to AI. I love that. And if it's quicker, that's fine for other people. But for me, I'm like, there's something therapeutic to it. It makes me happy. So I don't want to give that to ChatGPT because it can have my grocery list and try and figure out the trends of what my shopping needs to look like each week. Like so I say all that to go, knowing the things in your work that light you up, figuring them out, they'll be different to me. It won't be writing in a blank. It's funny, we both have that as a joy, but we both love communication.
Yeah.
I think you've got to keep coming back to what are the things that light you up. Now, here's the problem I've had. Under stress, those things are the first things to go. Like when I'm like delivering like a bazillion workshops in the space of like 2 weeks all over the countryside, I lose that and I can feel it in my energy levels. And
it's about energy management.
Yes.
Energy management is the biggest challenge I find in amongst all of that. I want to write, I want to create, I want to say something that I think's reflective or insightful or useful, but I've actually got to give that energy to the client. And it's really interesting. And then or sit on a plane for 4 hours and that isn't as relaxing as it sounds when you do it every week, is it?
No, and the person next to you reclines their seat and you're on Jetstar and you're like, oh, my knees.
Yeah.
Just like, anyway. But I do think...
Are you a non-reclined seat person?
No.
Absolutely.
You do not recline those seats. It cannot be done.
Domestic flights do not get seats reclined. Is that your view of the world?
I strongly believe...
I'm glad we've established that. That would have been difficult.
Are you...
No, I'm a non-recliner.
Because
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
I'm 6'1".
It's not okay.
You recline, we are way closer to each other than we need to be.
You recline, you're getting a knee to the lower back. That's it's
Right. We are recording, by the way, just so you know.
Do you want to grow in your career? Are you after a fresh start or some inspiration? Or perhaps you're in a career crisis? The book Sort Your Career Out and Make More Money by Shelley Johnson and Glenn James is such a great resource at any stage in your career. It will give you practical strategies for things like getting a promotion, making more money, moving into a leadership role, taking career risks, or if it's time to quit your job, and so much more. You can find Sort Your Career Out and Make More Money wherever good books are sold or via the link in the podcast show notes. It's also available as an audiobook.
Jump to the tough parts of the business and again, full disclosure, we have conversations pretty regularly. And what were the hard bits about starting the business? What were the dark nights of the soul, the I'm doubting myself? But also, I actually want you to be more specific. Can you identify the fear that maybe doesn't exist anymore, or the thinking that has been reshaped or molded because you're nearly 4 years into it at the time of recording, and it's going well and you've learned a lot and all those types of things. But there are hard days.
Oh,
Yeah,
really
tell us a
hard
bit about
days.
them
Really.
and a couple of examples.
It's interesting you say the fears you're past, because I don't think I'm past a lot of these. I think I've just become better at moving through it, like as in acknowledging that that's there and then still pressing on. Whereas I think early days I probably would have found it more paralysing.
I think that's important in itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and so the one thing is like a couple of key things would be what I would describe as scarcity mindset. So, and I know lots of people would talk about scarcity mindset, but the feeling of it's all going to blow up or it'll just stop working or I won't be able to sell anything or people won't want to work with me or whatever those fears are, that's been a big one that I continually feel like I have to work through. The other one, and this is what we've talked about offline, working in some well-known contexts where I just felt, bro, I don't know how I've ended up here. I don't know if I should be here. It's probably a combination of imposter syndrome and then also maybe a little bit like paralysing self-doubt. Those have been some of the things that I've had to.
Was it a sense of feeling incapable or was it a sense of feeling like you were at the end of your learning space and this was now uncharted territory or combinations?
I might sit with that for a moment.
I'll tell you what's behind the question, and maybe this can be good for our listeners, and that is that I find part of my job is to take people to the edge of their learning zone and then move them into the uncharted territory. So what am I doing in my life and my rhythm and my character and my roles in the world that's moving me into uncharted territory at any given time? Am I reminding myself of the vulnerability and the discomfort and the feeling of failure or potential failure that could come with that? And I find that doing that makes me far more empathetic to guiding my clients across that space.
So I'm glad you gave that context because I'm thinking even just that reference of the edge, like getting yourself to the very edge of what and going, okay, now I'm stepping over that. Like this is beyond, it feels sometimes beyond discomfort. Like it's like, and there's been like I can think of probably 3 moments, but 2 in particular. And even I know, like even talking about it makes me feel that nerves that come with that I have associated with that. Those experiences of speaking in front of like a group of people where you're like, I feel like I have no business being here. Yeah. And I think one thing that's helped is having voices like you in my world, like having people that you trust who like can say, I believe in you. Like you can do this. That was a really big thing. The other thing is sometimes I've reminded myself, and it might have been Mark Manson's podcast. He had someone on, I believe he describes it as, and this is a bad expression, but idiots all the way down. And the whole idea is when you go into any big environment, it still has the same issues, the same problems, the same stuff, even if it looks glamorous, even if it's got a big, beautiful brand on it, even like at the end of the day, they're struggling to figure out what to do just as much as you're struggling to figure out what to do. It's just that it's a different version of it. And like whether you like that expression or not, it was a good reminder for me to go, I might feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but these people also don't know what they're doing. And that just like being able to have permission to go in and then.
It's a great equalizer, isn't it? Yeah.
And it might, I think there's been something in it. The other, just as we're talking about the big fear and probably the biggest, if I'm thinking about it now, is fear of what people think. So less fear of failure to me. Like it's funny, like I'm like comfortable with failure because I think I can learn from that.
Yeah, you're great at laughing at yourself, especially with your laugh.
It's very loud and cackly, but I do like to laugh at myself.
But you're actually good at that. But but it's also the risk is you become deprecating.
Yes.
But are you more saying people will think like, who does she think she is?
How would I describe it?
Yeah.
People think you're not, if people think you're not good enough, or people think, I'll tell you this one story actually. When I did an article for Sydney Morning Herald, and I thought it was a really good article, like I was actually really happy with it, which is rare. Like I'll usually put something out and be like, whatever, that's probably like average or whatever. But this is a good article. It's about 3 things your boss wants you to stop doing. And it was, your boss wants you to stop being defensive to feedback. Your boss wants you to stop having an entitlement mindset when it comes to pay and benefits. And your boss wants you to stop showing up with an ego. So those were the 3 things we talked about. And I thought they were pretty like, yeah, everyone can agree to this. Like no one wants to work with someone who's defensive to feedback. Anyway, I got this feedback to my to my post that was like on the article, this is the worst advice I've ever heard. How dare you call yourself a leadership expert, blah, blah, blah. It went on and on and on. And it was from someone who is quite like, has decent following, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was like so rattled by the criticism, like the public criticism on this like article. And I talked to Glenn actually and said, oh my gosh, look at this thing. This has really rattled me. And he's just like, hey, the more you step into these spaces where you have an opinion, the more you just have to be prepared that it's actually okay if people don't agree.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I think it's the desire to be liked, probably at the heart of it, like a real deep desire to be liked by people or something.
Or the fear of being disliked.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, it can go both ways because you don't know the person, so whether they like you or not, that's a possible for me. I'm just thinking about that.
Well,
and sharing.
I think is that the other thing is like you have to confront your own ego. It's funny, I was writing about ego, but then it triggers up the exact things I was talking about. My initial thing is I get defensive to that person's feedback that they don't like the article that I wrote. I'm like, you don't speak that about, no, but then like the ego pops up and I'm like, at the end of the day, coming back to a helpful tool for me of confronting this fear has been just coming back to who am I here to serve and help. It doesn't matter if not everyone likes it, but that's a continual process.
Yeah, the fact that we're not for everyone is, I think, is a maturation process, right? And you know, I'm a little bit older than you, and I'm well and truly not for everyone. And you can tell sometimes. I'm in a room and I'm like, yeah, probably should have given this to someone else, because you're just not for everyone. And it's an important thing. Now, the thing that shouldn't stop us from doing is learning from the feedback and those experiences. Because, I mean, I'm with you. I still remember the time that I presented at an industry body and the feedback was, you are the worst speaker we've ever had and we will never have you back.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay,
and
thanks.
how did you handle that?
At the time, pretty defensively. Yeah. I mean, this is conversations about you, not me, but quite defensively at the time. On reflection, I was going through enormous organisational change. So I think I was leading with a limp and that came out. If I was to be fully responsible, I think the fact that I was feeling pretty bruised came out to my audience. And I still stand by my content that was about serious organisational change, really big, really hard decisions, and I would still make those decisions again today. I'd do it differently because I think hopefully I've learned a thing or two along the way. But you sit between those two things and going, wow, worst ever. Whew. Okay. All right. Can't get much lower than rock bottom.
Yes.
So
it's funny, isn't it, that how much I don't know, like every time you take a risk in your career and your work, there is the emotional exposure to potentially getting feedback like that. That was not good. that was terrible, that was the worst we've ever heard, or whatever. And you can look at that and go, well, I am going to then shrink back because I don't want that exposure, or I'm not prepared for that risk. But I think on the other side, we don't often account for the risk of shrinking back, what that means for us, like playing small. And I know in those opportunities where you're met with a challenge of, okay, you're invited to speak at a certain thing and you think, oh, that terrifies me, or invited to take a certain risk in your career and you're like, that absolutely terrifies me. You can play small and shrink back from it, or you can step in and there's the risk of emotional exposure, of failure, of people not liking what you're doing. But there's also the huge upside of the growth that comes from any of those experiences, whether they work out or not, there's still growth in it. And so I think being able to see that and go, you start to get I don't think it's an addiction because it's not the right way to describe it, but it's like you start to realize that those moments push you. And it goes to what you're saying about the uncharted waters, which I love that. It's like the scary place, but it's also a space of excitement of like.
Well, you get feedback that you can do it, right? It's so interesting because one of the things that's coming up for me while you're sharing some of these things is a conversation I recently had with a client who has done some really exciting things. Oh, they have just stepped out and stepped up in a way that's just inspiring. And they said to me, we're having a quiet coffee in Sydney, and he said, I can see that I can do hard things and big things. And I'm like, that is a game-changing experience for you to be able to capture, because we're not talking about guaranteed success and failure. We're talking about you are becoming more match fit to tackle tough things. And that will serve you forever. It's amazing.
I love that, even just how you describe that there of like, I can see I can actually do tough things. I can, the mental toughness of it to me is something that's really, I don't know, it's really inspiring. And I think that's something, just even processing that out loud, that I would love more of in my work and career.
Yeah. In the spirit of that, let me ask a question around what's the most helpful way? Because I'm pale, stale and male, right? So this is a real risk for me. I could be the worst ever person to have interviewed Shelley Johnson on a podcast after what I'm about to ask you. But what I'd really love to hear you talk about, and the question is, what's the best way to invite you to talk about the way that you've managed family?
Oh, it's the question.
Yeah. And
what's the best way to invite? It's funny, like even just like the question in and of itself, you can hear. I'm going to take a sec. 1 second.
Well, and we've talked about the dynamics of it offline and chatted about different things. And Sam's obviously a legend. And
he is a legend.
Got 2 great kids. And I suppose while I'm fearing, well, you shouldn't have to ask her that, other people don't get asked. But for you, it's been a reality, right?
It's been huge.
Bowie was 18 months old when you started Boldside.
Yes, he is little. And I think it's so funny, like even this conversation starts like, what are the initial things, but gets to probably the deepest things, which is like the family stuff for me. And I find whenever I talk about it, I always get emotional because it's been hard. Like it's been really hard. I think that's why it's actually good to talk about it.
Hard to be away.
And I think it's hard when you, and for anyone who is a mum of little kids that is like really driven by their work and their career, sometimes it can be hard when you don't feel like you have a community of people who are doing it in the same way that you are. And for me, that has felt lonely and isolating, and equally for Sam. So he sold his trade business at about maybe 18 months into us running running Boldside. So we had 2 businesses, 2 small businesses. It was absolute hell. And 2 kids under 5, I believe. And it just wasn't working. I was traveling all the time. He was like early starts, and I got a phone call from our financial advisor, Phil Thompson, who's been on this pod, who's absolutely amazing. And he said, Shell, you got to sell that business and go all in on one thing, and you're going to kill yourself. Like, what are you doing? And we did, within the space of like 2 months, we did it. We were like, okay, Sam will stop running his business. He's going to be a stay-at-home dad so that we can go all in on Boldside and really grow it. And that's the only way with all the travel, like all of our clients are interstate. And I mean, gosh, it's been full on. And I think the reason, like for me, and I'll be raw. I think it's forced me to confront some really deeply ingrained like cultural norms and stereotypes of like like a lot of mum guilt, which I would say is less guilt and heaps more shame. If you're not present at the assemblies, if you're not at every sporting event or every last minute bloody thing the school decides to do, you're not a good parent. And having grown up in a family who were very, very present, my mum was a stay-at-home mum for most of my childhood, what I'm doing is so different to what I'd seen modelled. And so when I think about that, I often thought, well, I must be doing it wrong because my mum is amazing. My mum and my dad have done a beautiful job of raising our family. So I'm like, well,
I know your parents. So.
And they've raised 5 kids who are all relatively, good humans. And I genuinely good humans.
You, of course, being the model and everyone else sort of following. Is that how we're going to start this?
All of us, I think, but it's so funny because when you respect a certain way and you've seen something work and then you do something differently to that model, you think, I must be doing this wrong. And what does this mean for my kids? And what does this mean for my husband? And how are we going to make this work?
And wrong and different are two very different things, right?
Wrong and different. And it's funny you say that. And it's so funny, like every wrong and different, I always think, and I've talked about this a lot online, about the Aldi slogan. The Aldi slogan is good, different. And I freaking love Aldi.
I love it too.
And I think
it's genius.
It's genius. And for me and for I will say this to any mums listening who are in the thick of it with their career and they've got little kids and they're doing something different to what society or socially is considered the norm, whatever the norm is. Good, different. Like I'm like, Sam's doing an amazing job as a dad. He's so present with the kids. Yes, I feel like I'm on a plane every second day. But I know that it is good different because we have tried to be really intentional, and you've been really pivotal in this, like of saying, hey, you need to take this time off. You got to be intentional with this. But like,
it's been so good to see that across the course of the year. Let me just interrupt and go because I know, we have had conversations where I've said every single holidays, during term time, at least a week of, term 1, 2 and 3, you take a week off.
Yes.
And the business can handle it and the clients can handle it, and Christmas it's longer. And to see that you've done that this year, including picking up the car and driving it home with Sam, and it's good for you,
You know what? It's so funny because that has been a huge game changer, and getting intentional. And I would say it takes discipline to do those things. And I'm really glad to have had that voice. And I mean, I think it also has had a huge, Sam, I found there's been guilt for me of the mum guilt thing and having to wrestle through that and unravel the lies that are in around that. And for Sam, it's been him not having a community like dads don't have the same community as mums in terms of if you're a stay-at-home dad, how many stay-at-home dads do you know? Like for him, he knows one person, one other person in our Newcastle community. And that has been its own huge challenge. And I think if we want more mums to have these epic careers, if we want more mums in the women in the boardroom, we also have to have space where more dads have community, where more dads have support. And that has been a big thing for us. We've navigated, and I think that's why it's funny, like talking about this is so raw for me, but it also feels like something that I feel like I want to talk more about because I think it's very timely for people. It's very relevant, and I would love to see more women shaking off the mum guilt and actually being able to go, you know what, good freaking different.
I love that. Thank you for allowing me to ask the question.
I felt it was coming, and I knew I'd tear up.
Yeah.
I knew I'd get emotional about it.
Well, I think it's, you've got something to say about it because of the way that you've handled yourself and Sam too and the kids as well. And you're modelling something good and something different, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, Aldi, we love you.
What are you? I've got two more questions. Right. First one is, what are you proudest of so far, and what would you tell pre-Boldside Shelley?
Ooh.
And they kind of go together, but they sort of stand alone at the same time.
What am I proudest of, and what would I tell?
So far,
Yeah,
proudest of
so
so
far.
far.
I'm probably most proud of confronting like a lot of those limiting beliefs and like actually like challenging them head on rather than shrinking back. I think that's the thing of like anytime a limiting belief is like you can't do it, not good enough, don't have what it takes, being able to just hit that head on and go, you know what, I'm going to actually step into that and follow some of that fear and go, I don't want that to like hang over my life and work and head. And so that's been one thing, challenging the limiting beliefs. That's probably something I've been most proud of. What would I tell myself? I think I would say you're going to be really surprised. Yeah. Like you
said right at the start, not how I thought it would turn out.
No.
Yeah.
Not how I like you're going to be freaking surprised. Yeah. There was this one beautiful, I'll tell this final story of very, very start of the business. I sat with someone when I was like not in the best headspace and very nervous about how it all go. And she said to me, Shell, I see you like this Coke bottle that is all shaken up and you just have to take the lid off. And for me, it always triggers up these emotions because I think so many people that I work with, I can see that in them, like that same thing. And so many women in leadership roles that have this self-inflicted lid and a ceiling that they've put on themselves. And I just want to be like, take that lid off. Like you're all shaken up. There's so much like in you. And so that to me is the combination of confronting the limiting beliefs and being surprised at what will happen.
See, I think for those of us 2, 3, 4 years down the track of Boldside, we're less surprised because you're a genuine talent. You've got it's the lid has been taken off, and we're seeing the creativity and the commitment and the passion and the ambition play out. But we also see the reality and the quirky and the vulnerability and the authenticity. And I actually think that's one of the things that makes you so endearing in that sense. I'm just so grateful that I got to sit on this side of the table to hear you tell the Boldside story, because I really believe it's something that needs to be captured and shared, and on lots of levels for lots of different people. My hope is that they would be encouraged, that they would be inspired, they would get value, perspective, and resolve from the Boldside story as well, and the parts that have played to get you here. I wish nothing more than good success for you, Sam, and the kids in the business. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Ro. And thanks for I appreciate you making it safe to actually speak vulnerably, because it is that's why I've been so raw.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do with you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's quite moving for me too to see. And so, I think it's a conversation worth having. So thanks for having it.
Thank you.
If you have enjoyed the show today, forward it to a friend, colleague, or family member who you may think it would benefit. Shelley's business Boldside provides leadership training for a variety of different businesses. To learn more, visit boldside.com.au. If you would like to book Shelley to speak at one of your events, please reach out to the team via moneypodcast.com.au.